We're live and unmuted.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to our special board meeting tonight. It is 5:01, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Dr. Murphy, you want to go ahead and get us started with the superintendent update?
Yeah, I listed 2 items on there for you to review and just an update with the capital projects. If you have a chance to go into the conference room, we did some poster board printing of the site elevation changes on the property that we're preparing to go out to bid on, that's adjacent to the agriculture building and the student parking area. So you can look at that on the wall. I've also got the gymnasium bleacher specifications. You can see exactly how many seats we would have in that project. The bid is in there with that. It is currently at $99,500 and some dollars. The parking lot project has not been bid yet. We've got to get it out to bid. Mr. Fusilier was talking to me. We're very close back with a couple different proposals for you to review on the K1 awning from Hot Springs Awning. So we don't have that in writing just yet. And then we did get a $6,000 reduction in the bid price on the track. The track right now is sitting at $180,000. And I have that bid in there as well. So you can kind of look at those bids at your discretion. They're in the conference room. They're available for public view. And so no action to be taken this evening. And of course, we're wanting to kind of pair up our capital improvement plan going into October. So I've taken a couple board members on site visits, plan on taking all the members between now and the October time frame when we have a board meeting. So make plans, and of course plans do change. We had a meeting scheduled today for a site visit and we're unable to do that, but we will reconnect and make that happen. Any questions regarding any of the site plans or comments on any site visit that anyone has taken? Okay, the second item is I wanted to just kind of bring you up to speed. You know, the question was put out there, how our teachers are doing in the September meeting, and how are our students doing, and we're continuing to evaluate our planning process, and you know, we feel like some of our teachers are stretched pretty thin, trying to, with grades 5 through 12, those teachers are assigned virtual students as well as on-site students, and we're kind of bringing in some progress data as it relates to our virtual students and on-site students. And of course, we've had a learning gap as well. And so we're really trying to rethink, is there anything we can do to assist that process and maybe have an intense focus on remediation if needed. So we kind of introduced as a leadership team 2 weeks ago, we started discussing could we modify one day of the week, still allow all students who want to come to campus, all students are invited to come to school 5 days a week. But one day a week, could we change the structure of that schedule, specifically in grades 5 through 12? In our discussion, Mr. Campbell, the way things are currently, we have a virtual teacher and a homeroom teacher. So if a second grade child comes to school on that designated day, they would just come to school. Their teacher would be there, homeroom would be there, they would have their day. When you look at the middle school and the high school, if we carve out some time within that day to let our teachers focus on the virtual students, what would we do with the remaining students that attend? And that day would be a day that could be required depending on how you're doing, but if you're doing well, may not be required for you to attend on that day. So it would lessen the number of students on that day so we could intensify the level of support for the remaining students and allow for our core area teachers to kind of look at and provide some support to virtual students. We're still just in the discussion phases. I'm bringing it to your attention because if we're discussing it, you're going to hear about it. I promise you. And so we've got to bring it before our guiding coalition. We want to probably embed it within our academic group of the guiding coalition plan, kind of begin to build that out a little further. There are schools doing this. We considered doing it initially. But when they said you had to have on-site instruction 5 days a week, it kind of put us in a position where we targeted instruction 5 days a week for all students. So we would still provide instruction. It's not a free day, but it's a very targeted intervention day, and it does kind of flip where if Dana, the students who she teaches that are virtual, she would have a carved out window of time in that day where those students would have they would be readily available. It also gives us the latitude to make sure that everything that we're getting ready to put out to virtual students is prepared correctly. We're targeting a Friday. In that, we would probably remove our early release on Wednesday and make it a part of our Friday. We would run buses on Friday. We would serve lunch on Friday. We'd have breakfast on Friday. We would do everything that we normally do. We'd have an athletic period. We're going to have school.
We would not early release on Friday.
But we would not early release. We'd have a full day. It would just be a alteration within the day. So each day would look identical within the week. And during that window of time, for instance, if we had to have a whole group in a PLC, we would have to, during that 1 hour to an hour and a half period of time, you would restructure that to allow for your paras and others to take smaller groups of kids to certain locations, and you would break those up, and you would have individuals watching students during that window of time when the whole group occurs. That model is a component of the professional learning community. It is a little more challenging with kids on site, but we have kids on site right now with esports, with athletics, with other related things that occur after school. When we do an early release, we still have students on campus. Inevitably, you're going to have students on your campus whether you release or not. And in this concept, we are openly letting anyone come to school. We're highly encouraging people to come to school, but we're also giving that flexibility back to the parent with the intentional purpose of helping our core area teachers. I would say that and underline it, our core area teachers having some intentional focus not only with on-site students, but an opportunity to draw their attention to the virtual students. Very much in the discussion phase, and I would turn it over to you so you could elaborate a little bit. I know you've got some talk points.
Two things, looking at Friday or Monday for two reasons. Those are the lowest days of attendance in the after-school program, the FACES program, by about half of what it is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it would have less impact on that program if we went on Monday or a Friday. And we're looking at the Monday or Friday, probably the Friday. Also because that would then give us a 72-hour period with decreased contact if we have fewer kids on site, more scattered, and then so if we go to contact tracing and we have to go back 48 hours, if they weren't here for 72 hours, then it's a non-school event. So that's the other kind of piece of that.
What we're seeing trend a little bit is that some of our different students that are involved in our programs are choosing to be a virtual student because this continual contact, they may not get COVID, but if they have to quarantine for 14 days, they may miss 4 games. And so we have some of our best students choosing to go virtual to avoid the contact, and so this 72-hour window helps us in the element of contact tracing, but it's kind of a sidebar to our intentional focus of supporting teachers in that element of planning and student contact with virtual students as well as on-site students. So it's kind of, we've asked our leadership team to make a list of pros and cons. That's where you start with any consideration of implementation. There's cons to this in the same manner that there's potential pros to it. Somebody that wants a true sense of the very same thing 5 days a week, that'd be a con to them, because that 5th day of the week is going to, even though they're coming to school, the activities may be different, the places that they go could look different, and what our teachers do on that day that may not be teaching core instruction will look different, because we'll have we're estimating elementary probably the highest, but we are prepared to take them right into homeroom and have school. Grades 5 through 12, we think that we'll have,
It'll decrease.
as we go. But we've got 429 students enrolled in the high school, and almost 150 of them are virtual full-time. And so, we're running just a little over 250 that are with us. And so we have to, because each one of these kids taking a virtual course is taking it for credit. And there will be passes and failures associated with that. And right now, we're just trying to see where those trend lines are running and understand full well that if this potentially is not a solution, the other component that we're looking at is trying to come up with some intense support on designing a virtual class. We've been handed this COVID element and asked to conduct virtual and do on-site and build lessons and keep lessons in front of kids a quarter at a time and keep everything in a digital format. And we may have to go back and look at the fidelity of how you would design and implement and teach a virtual class because one, this is going to go on longer than we want it to. And two, it's uncertain the impact that it will have on the future of our environment. So we have to take the necessary steps to invest in continual education for our staff to prepare for the long term, not the short term.
Is this something we're thinking about second quarter?
Yeah, well, we're looking to, we want some options in our pocket because inherently,
Your teachers are,
well, we have teacher stress, but
Stressed.
we're also looking at student outcomes. And we're not seeing strong evidence that student outcomes are going to wane where we really want them based on the gap that we missed. There's a con in the argument of if there's a gap of learning, if you take instructional time away, it's not that we're taking instructional time away, you're repurposing that instructional time to the areas that student may be deficient, not all areas within the day. So it's a conversation topic. I'm making you aware of it solely because you're going to hear some things about it. We're not at a point of implementing it. We're at a point of introducing it and allowing for us to go to what I would say a teacher level of pros and cons, and then a community level of pros and cons, and then ask our community and our teachers to understand that we still have the same staffing model we had last spring, and we're attempting to do two things instead of one thing with the same model of staffing. And so what we've chosen to do is we now have to kind of look at the schedule, or we have to look at additional people. You're going to be hiring some paras this evening that are going to help us cover as substitutes, and inherently that's another thing that we're struggling with is we're trying to design this model of instruction 5 days a week, and we can't fill it 3 days a week with help, care less 5 days a week.
So you're just reallocating the time and the resources a different way?
Yes, 1 day a week.
What do you envision all the kids that don't need the target, the Friday or Monday? So what do they do if they're in a position where they can't stay home because of age? I know, but what are they going to do?
What would they do?
Yeah.
They will do a wide variety of activities. And first it'll start with intentional support, whatever their greatest deficiencies are. It's more of a targeted intervention for them. They will have, at some point in the day, might have a paraprofessional watching them. Another point in the day, potentially an art teacher, could be a media specialist, could be the core area teacher where they're struggling the most. Because
I'm
the
thinking
day,
that an all-A student that doesn't have deficiencies,
right.
and they still can't stay at home, so they're
Right.
just gonna sit somewhere with somebody
Well,
watching.
with an all-A student in that regard, what I would tell you is I would take and pair them with someone else, and yes, we want to enrich them, but if we could get them to teach someone else, their retention level exceeds 80%, and it moves them into a point of application. So as we look at this model, It's about adults helping kids, and it's about kids helping kids, because ultimately what we're trying to do is arrive at a different end result in terms of the degree of student support. So before we write that kid off as a liability, they could truly be an asset to the system, but we would also want to find out how we could challenge that kid as well. And if they are an all-A student, we have, you don't want to go that route on a continuum, but it may be adaptive software that helps that kid. It could be introduction of curriculum at a different level. But we do have those kids in the system now, and that same kid in a 5-day instructional system is not challenged significantly anyway. But those are great questions. I just want you to be aware and kind of get your wheels turning around that and kind of make your own little list of what you view would be the pluses, what the minuses would be. We're at a point of reflection, not implementation, but you can't reflect until you introduce a concept and start processing it. And that's why I wanted to make it a public conversation, not a private conversation. We've had private conversations for a couple of weeks with the leadership team. We've now introduced it to the teachers, and right now the teachers are processing, and they're coming up with all kinds of questions, just kind of where they're at in that process. And so, it's going to take, if we did want to implement this at the quarter, you have to give yourself enough time to process through, because there would be an all-hands-on-deck approach to devising, to address your question. We would arrive at the answer to that question based on everyone's ideas, because our team as a whole, our teachers involved, will help us figure out how to make that work the best for that day versus me just spitballing what we do with that A student. There'd be some other things, I'm sure, that would come to the mind of our staff.
And this is 5th through 12th only. 1st through 4th and all that's just going
Go regular.
It would be, the model, the reason it's exclusionary is right now we have an assigned virtual teacher in kindergarten.
in the lower,
Up through grade 4. Now, what I would tell you is we're seeing some evidence of some of those kids returning. So inherently, if we end up with only 8 kids going virtual in grade 1, maybe 6, and our grade level class sizes start coming up because they're all coming back on site, we may have to flip that model back to all of those teachers teaching on site, and the 6 kids that are virtual either stay with that one teacher. You understand what I'm saying? So we've got to keep our class sizes down. And what we can't control at quarter is we know we're going to get some people choosing to come back and some people choosing to go home, potentially at the quarter. I know I talked to Frank today, and he's got like 5 or 6 requests to come back on site at the quarter. So that this student population, they're all enrolled, but they're in different.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna just be an ongoing
Yes.
conversation to, try
As
to
it
figure
works
out.
or doesn't work for people.
Yeah, yeah.
And as long
Specifically
as,
parents and kids.
as long as there has to be the virtual option, there's gonna be somebody going to school virtually.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, we can't make it go away.
Right.
As you continue, teachers will be involved in this process.
Right.
That's what I'm interested in, hearing the teacher's feedback.
Yeah, I would like.
That's probably a note that I've got popping up.
Yeah.
We have 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, we should probably do business.
Okay, we need to move forward.
Yes.
Remember that at Kayla?
Yeah.
That woke me up.
That was scary.
It was like, it's
Put a
done.
timer on you guys.
20 minutes on you guys, we're not talking.
We just asked a couple questions.
That was it.
Okay.
What are we moving on to here? Let's
Item
see.
2.
Item 2.
We
Yeah.
have a
Oh,
motion.
got a motion here. Motion to approve federal programs assurances 2020, 2021, and authorize Dr. Murphy to sign such assurances.
So this is just exactly what it says, it's the federal program assurances. I thought that this is what I had you approve in the board meeting, those were the standard
Yes, what you said.
assurances. And so we need to get these approved as well, it's for all of the title programs and the homeless program, the ELL, all of those standards, the standard approval that you have him sign off on every year. But I have to have the motion from you and the approval for him to sign those, so.
Okay. So the motion to approve federal programs assurances 2020-2021 and to authorize Dr. Murphy to sign such assurances. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 4-0.
All right. Next motion to accept the attached resignation effective December 31st, 2020 for Nancy Yarberry, high school special education teacher.
What if you don't want to accept
I know. She's
it? I know. My apologies.
She's a good one.
Yes,
Yeah.
she is.
Anybody have any questions on that? No? Everybody had a chance to review that? Okay. Motion to accept the attached resignation effective December 31st, 2020, Nancy Yarberry, high school special education teacher. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 4-0.
Motion to hire the following for the corresponding position for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. Kindergarten aide, Brandy Mendez. Elementary floater, Mary Bradley. Middle school floater, Karen Jefferson Niblett. And high school floater, Jeff Cox.
And
Any
those,
questions?
those floater positions are substitute teachers. We got that changed in the
agenda.
but it didn't-
That's okay.
I didn't get changed here.
They'll, yeah, they'll just be.
And so what they're doing is they're supporting us, either they'll be the first substitute called. So if we have someone that's either out on quarantine or test positive, or they're out on just leave, this person will go to those rooms. They're kind of designated to the building, but we told them on the front end they could be in any building. And now, we probably won't take the high school all the way to the elementary, but the high school could definitely end up in the middle school, and so we've at least given them the latitude to have one per building. This would also be some additional staffing to support us with additional adults in the event that we choose to try to do something on Friday that looks a little different.
So the principals will be communicating before they call Kelly subs,
Yes.
and they'll talk and say, hey, how many subs you need, how many we need.
They're just
So-
rethinking their plan and making sure that we're getting the first contact so we don't get a Kelly sub assignment until these individuals are filled first. Now, in the kindergarten one, I think that's an aid to support instruction based on our numbers.
Based on the numbers, we weren't able, we advertised for a kindergarten teacher and didn't find anyone that we wanted to bring forward. And so we are able to meet standards using an aide. And we've been doing that with the two that we hired to run the opportunity room.
Yes.
They've been kind of pinch hitting in there during parts of the day. And so this will give us one that we can share in there throughout the day in a kindergarten classroom to meet standards.
Yep, sounds good. So the motion to hire the following for the correlating position for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. Kindergarten aide, Brandy Mendez. Elementary floater, Mary Bradley. Middle school floater, Karen Jeffress Niblett. High school floater, Jeff Cox. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 4-0. So
And
we're,
I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn our meeting.
Right, we do have an upcoming regional meeting of training for the school board, and so you're gonna make a motion to
Mhm.
adjourn then.
Yes.
And we will not be streaming the training.
That's correct. We'll be doing our training after the meeting.
Okay.
So,
we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. It's not a vote, or do we need?
no, you don't, I mean,
We're done.
well, I've made a motion to adjourn, so
Adjourn.
Second.
Second.
there you go.
Okay.
And we'll vote to adjourn.
Okay, so all those in favor of adjourning? Say
Aye.
aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
So should we log into
Adjourning
the-
here.
Just because
We're done.
Yeah, we gotta,
Okay.
we have to end